Oh, Steve's off in Spain, isn't he?
I am indeed.
Oh, that looks lovely.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Slightly better than England.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say we've got the sun, we just don't have the heat with it. That's what we've got
Ah,
here. Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll be nearer to you. I'm going to Cape Verde on Sunday, so I'm like,
oh,
oh,
been there.
yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah. I'm
Absolutely beautiful. Which
looking
island
forward
you
to it.
going to?
Sal,
Yeah,
I
that's where
say
I
that.
went.
Yeah, yeah. No, so
Beautiful.
that's good. Yes. So I will be still not officially, but still doing some emails, and I will be drinking my cocktail. So I think there'll be some blunter responses than usual when I get questions through. It's like this is your fault. You sort it out. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Right. So what I have. So I'm just trying to get rid of some of my tabs. Say is we're going to go through disciplinaries today. So I was going to open the PowerPoint. I have got a PowerPoint. There's the PowerPoint. Doo-ba-doo-ba-doo. And we can go through that and we can ask questions as we go through. And Nadia and I will sort of jump in and say stuff. Okay. So doo-ba-doo-ba-doo. Hopefully you should all be able to see that.
Yes.
Yep, good. Okay. So, disciplinaries. Why do we need to do a disciplinary? Because you're not really allowed to just yell at people. I appreciate Green's teams are slightly different, and they do more yelling at each other. But you can't give out a formal written warning unless you've gone through a proper disciplinary process. We've had the reason we're doing this training is because we've had a lot of people coming to us recently saying, can you just send me a warning to give out? And then we talk to them, and it turns out they've not only have they've not done a process, they've mainly not even spoken to the person about the incident. And they've just gone, we're just going to give them a piece of paper, and then they'll be on time and they'll turn up. And it's like, no, you have to talk to them. You have to make clear to them that this is unacceptable. And I appreciate that is an uncomfortable conversation, but you're not going to do it by just handing out a piece of paper. That's the thing. Um, who should be involved? You need to have different people at different stages of the process. Okay. So it can be the line manager or the club manager. Nobody's involved in the situation. So if it was somebody punching the captain and there were three witnesses, neither the captain nor the three witnesses could be in charge of the process. Okay. They would be witnesses, they would make witness statements. It would be somebody who wasn't involved in the process who'd be involved in that. Okay. You can involve the committee. If you've got in your handbook who exactly is going to do whichever meeting, you need to take that out because we need to find the most appropriate person to do the meeting, not the person who's actually named, because we all know committees are not elected necessarily on their ability to do a role. It's because they were the ones who didn't step backwards when volunteers were asked for. So you need to know that you can choose whoever you need to be, and it's not going to be the captain, because of course you would have the conflict if somebody did punch the captain and it says the captain has to do the disciplinary. Well, you can't do that, and now you've got a problem because you're not following your own process. So if it says who is going to do each level, you need to remove that, and it will just be whoever is appropriate. Okay. We do it, these meetings on Zoom, so you can suspend somebody, and we'll come to that. And you can do a disciplinary on Zoom. They can have a companion log in on their own Zoom account, and you can do a Zoom disciplinary even if they don't have a computer at home, because they can do it on their phone. So there's no reason that you have to do it in person. We can do it on Zoom, and then we've automatically got the recording. Okay. But you should always audio record on your phone, a voice memo, record it so that we know exactly what was said. I'm going to say, honestly, by you as our client, what did you say? We want to know what the employee says as well, so that we can deal with anything that comes up. But the most important reason for doing it is so that we have an absolute 100% accurate record of what you said. So if the employee comes back and says, they started shouting at me and they started saying that I was dismissed and they hate me because of my race, we can go, okay, show us where that is on the audio recording. Oh, well, it's not on the audio recording. Well, when was it? Because we've got from before you came into the room, we're recording, and after you've left the room, we're recording, because we can hear the door closing. So exactly what point? Well, it felt like they were saying
Lorraine speaking. How can I help?
Yep. Oh, somebody needs to go on to...
Rachel's at lunch at the moment.
Sorry, there you go. That's very good. Right, Nadia, anything on this?
Jumping in there, you just need to make sure that you inform the employee that the conversation is being recorded. It's become more and more relaxed over the last few years in terms of how you do that. In the beginning, if we go sort of 3, 4, 5 years ago, you were saying, is it okay if I record this conversation? This might be used for notes and this might be sent out and all that nonsense. Now people are so used to being recorded. I mean, we're all being recorded and we don't care right now, right? So it's actually now you can just say, look, I'm recording this conversation so that I can come back to it later, so that I have the information for my records. You're welcome to do the same, or you can have a copy of mine. Off you pop. You just carry on. It's not a question. There's no question mark here. You have to inform them legally, but don't ask them their permission. If they really don't want to be recorded, they will interrupt you and say, no, I don't want to be recorded, but I don't think we've even had one of those in the last couple of years. So, yeah, but do make sure you tell them, because if you don't, then it's a problem.
Yeah, and we have that in our invitation to a disciplinary. So there's 2 aspects here, and we're going to go through the meetings. The investigation meeting, you don't usually give an invite out. So you wouldn't necessarily be telling them in the invite, you would actually say to them in the meeting, and we have a script for the investigation meeting. But for the disciplinary invite, we do say we will be recording, you will be provided with notes / a transcript within 10 working days, and you are welcome to record as well. And that usually puts everybody's mind at rest. And like Nadia says, we haven't had anybody say, no, I'm not doing that. So, okay. Right. Now, going through disciplinary process, if they are under 2 years service, currently, and that may change in October, but currently you don't have to follow a disciplinary process to dismiss them. Okay. You can say to them, it's not working out, off you go, as long as you pay their notice. You can say, I found evidence of you stealing. Here's the evidence. Off you go. You still don't have to do an investigation and a disciplinary. The only time, if they're under 2 years, that you would need to do a disciplinary is if you wanted to get out of paying the notice period. And that's what we have. If you've got chefs, for example, with a 3-month notice period after their trial period, that it would be then worth going through, if you've got evidence of gross misconduct, going through the full disciplinary process, okay? Because that's the only way to get out of paying the notice period if you are terminating, okay? You do need to have, and all of our clients have got the exemption in the handbook saying that we reserve the right not to follow the disciplinary process if you're under 2 years. The other side of it is, unfortunately, if they go off sick, okay? Now, if we think that there's a risk of that, we will have initiated an invite to an investigation meeting and said, if you go off sick once you've been made aware of a disciplinary process, you will only be paid SSP and not full sick pay. And that minimises the financial exposure there. But if they go off sick, you can't go through the process. Even if it's gross misconduct, you have to wait until they come back. And that is really, really frustrating. And we absolutely feel your pain, because we're like, they've been signed off for another 2 weeks or another month. And all you're doing is then saying, okay, when you're back at work, to be honest, depending on the situation, how much it is and how much we want to go to the line, we would either say, sorry to hear you're not feeling well. We have rescheduled your disciplinary meeting for 3 days after they're due back at work. And that will mean that they will probably come back with another sick note. If we think it's too risky to do that, we would wait until they were actually physically back at work and then give them the 3 days notice. But it's very much a case-by-case basis. Nadia, what do you think about that?
No, I just want to sort of agree with everything Caroline said here about not doing the process while someone's off sick. There's nothing for the club, or I think you're all from clubs here today. There is nothing for the club to be gained from doing the process while they're off sick. It just makes you feel better. I get it. It makes us feel better that there is progress on it, but you can't do anything with it anyway. You know, we would never advise you to dismiss someone while they're off sick. That's a recipe for disaster, even if you don't do everything right. You know, there's no point in trying to rush into an investigation while someone is signed off sick. You're not going to gain anything from that. You might just as well be safer and wait until they come back, and then be ready to go. And it's frustrating because sometimes you're ready to go, and then that morning you get a sick note to say, oh, you know, and then I can't tell you how many emails we get that is very frustrated with, surely this is not okay. And we're like, no, it's not, but there's nothing you can do about it. So yeah, unfortunately, we're always going to tell you to wait and just be ready for when they return.
And what we found is that when they realise that it doesn't matter how many sick notes are put in, I'm going to say it's not 20 sick notes, it's usually 2 or 3, that you are just going to keep rescheduling, and this is not going away. That's when they either resign and they say, I'm going to sue. I know my rights. It's like, what rights would that be? We've not done anything. You've decided to resign. We're allowed to invite you to a disciplinary meeting. Or they come to us and say, actually, could we have a settlement agreement conversation? Because they realise it's not going to go away. So it's not awful. It's not going to be 2 years of sick notes. It is going to be, actually, we can get this done within 3 months, but it's keeping you safe from the obvious claims. Okay. Right. Okay. So disciplinary process. You've got the investigation meeting, the disciplinary, and the appeal meeting. So the process is all 3 meetings, and you need different people at each stage. So this is what's called the informal stage of the process, the investigation, which means you don't have to invite them. Okay, you don't have to provide them with any information in advance. And I'm going to say it's 50-50 about the not inviting. Generally, we don't like to invite, but we will do. Under no circumstances do we give them information in advance. No, ever. We might say it's gross misconduct because we have evidence of stealing, but we would never give them the evidence of the stealing at this stage. Okay, not in advance of the meeting. Okay, they're not allowed to have a companion at all. Again, I say they're not legally allowed one. There is always a case to be made for somebody who has mental health issues that we might consider letting them have either the legal companion, which is a work colleague or a trade union rep, or a family member. But normally investigation is just the employee themselves, okay? You don't have to issue notes after an investigation. What has actually happened with us, though, is that we do use the investigation meeting, the recording of the investigation meeting, as evidence towards the disciplinary. So when we're doing it, we always use that transcript. Because I'm going to say what we found is that they'll have one story at investigation, and then you ask them exactly the same questions officially on the record at disciplinary, and they have a different reason. So they were really drunk in the investigation, and by the disciplinary, they say, oh, I was not drunk. I was absolutely sober. I was just being friendly. And it's like, oh, and the appeal, it was, oh, well, it's because I'm Central European and you know how touchy-feely I am. 3 different reasons why you couldn't keep your hands to yourself. Okay. We do the audio recording. We would say, I'm going to record this meeting so I can concentrate on the conversation. That's it. And you just go into this is an investigation meeting. And again, we've got the script for that. In the meeting, you'd have one person for the club or the employer. And I'm going to say, we don't usually do HR in the meetings anymore. We used to, again, I need to update this. This is what we used to do 3 or 4 years ago, that it actually was needed to have HR in there. we found that is not the case now, is it, Nadia?
No, not at all. You really don't. You can just have, you don't need HR in any of these processes. You need us. Yeah, you do. Just not in the meetings. So there really isn't a requirement. And again, this is just how the processes and the way of doing things have evolved over the years. 10 years ago, you wouldn't do any of these meetings without your HR person sitting there, right? Yeah. Now you barely have HR people there. We are your advisors and telling you how to do this process. Sometimes we would also say that it is, honestly, one person is enough, but two is okay, is what I'd say. If you have two people at each part of the process, you're very, very lucky to have six people who's not involved available to do this. But if you do have two people, a manager and a deputy manager or something, an investigation and then two disciplinary or whatever, that is fine, but not more than that. This is not a panel. This is not a jury, okay?
No.
Two is the max. The other thing I just wanted to add to this about the companions is you will be challenged quite a lot in investigations by people about not having a companion. And they'll be like, I have a right to have a companion. Or afterwards, they'll go, it wasn't fair because I wasn't given a companion. And I should tell you that ACAS is very much in favor of allowing a companion here. That does not mean it's legally required. Two very different things. It is not legally required. But ACAS is in favor of you allowing one. Now, we don't say absolutely not. We just say why. Why would you? What's the point? Companions just make the meetings more complicated because they talk too much.
Some of them, not all of them.
Most of them. But one of the places you may really want to consider allowing someone a companion, and we're dealing with a case that's got this going on right now, is where you have a bit of a language problem. That's one of the other places where you may want to say to someone, we're going to do an investigation meeting now. Do you want someone with you? Or where maybe you say to a manager who works with this person regularly or a supervisor, can you come into the meeting? Just so that you've got some help with some language barriers. And then, like Carolyne said, obviously, if you've got someone with mental health issues or you've got someone who's younger, then yes, you may allow a companion.
Okay. Now, the key thing there is that we've just about the investigation disciplinary that Nadia said, you've got to have different people in each meeting. So you have to think when you're starting this process, who is going to do which meeting? Who is my strongest person? The strongest person needs to be in the disciplinary. You're not doing any telling off, but you want somebody who, because that is the most official part of the process, is the disciplinary, because you make your decision on the back of that meeting. So if you've got somebody who's strong, they would need to be in the disciplinary. You've got the investigation, which is maybe done by the line manager, or if you're in a golf club, maybe the chair of house, chair of greens, somebody like that. Then it goes to the general manager for disciplinary, and then it maybe goes to the captain or the chairman for the appeal. Okay. But it has to be different people. It has to be people who are not involved at all in the situation. Okay. And if the general manager has been key in finding out all the information for the investigation, that means they cannot do the disciplinary. So I had that the general manager's like, right, so I've got all this information. I've given it to the line manager to do the investigation. They've done the investigation. I'm like, okay, so who's doing disciplinary? Well, I am. Well, you can't because you got all the investigation information together. So you were in the investigation stage. You need to have that. The aim is at least on the appearance of fresh eyes on each stage of the process. Okay, so you want somebody who has not discussed it, which is, again, in the golf club, why you do not discuss this at committal level. You don't discuss the outcome of the investigation at committee, because that means nobody on the committee can be involved in the rest of the process. Okay, it is not a group decision what happens. It's the individuals in each meeting who make the decision. The person who ran the investigation decides whether there's enough evidence to go to disciplinary. Just a yes or a no. That's pretty much it. And then the disciplinary person decides whether it's an advisory note, and we'll go through this, written warning, final written warning, or dismissal. And then the appeal looks to see whether that should be downgraded at all. We can't make it worse, but whether it be downgraded. But you've got to have different people. You cannot say, yeah, but I'm the best one for this, but you've already done a bit. And you also don't sit in as, if you did the investigation, you don't sit in the disciplinary to answer any questions. You are supposed to have written everything down and briefed the disciplinary person beforehand. You do not need to be in that meeting, okay?
So I'm going to jump in here with something that we see quite a lot. Sorry, Caroline.
Yes, right.
We really see this a lot, guys, where there's been an incident or an issue and the GM has gone to have just a little initial chat to find out what's happened here. And then gone, oh, okay, it's a big thing. Then called us and gone, okay, now my manager is going to do the investigation. Too late. You've had the conversation. The moment you touched this, it became your job. You know, the moment so we have so many people, so many of these that come to us where the clubs, the GM says to us, yeah, so this happened. And I asked him on the day, why is this going on? What happened? And he told me. And so now I've spoken to his manager and his manager is going to start the investigation. And that's where I'm going to go. Unfortunately not, because you've already started the investigation by having that informal chat. You immediately need to remember, if you're going to do the disciplinary, you need to step back and not touch it. It's really important because we have a lot of situations where the GM is then doing the investigation begrudgingly because we told them to. And then you're scrambling for, board members and committee members or whatever who will be willing to do the disciplinary. And let me tell you, it's a hard job to get a board member or a committee member to do a disciplinary because they don't want to take that responsibility. They're happy to do an appeal, but they don't like the disciplinary. So think, when you've got something like this, immediately think, hold on, let me step back. Who can I give this job to before you get involved?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you have to give them an invitation to a disciplinary meeting. You have to give them 3 working days notice. Working days are the legal working days, which is Monday to Friday, legal being lawyers' working days. They don't work weekends. I mean, they might, but not officially. And the point is, it's not if we've had people in food and beverage like, well, he works potentially 7 days a week, so can we include the weekend? No, the 3 working days is to enable the employee to go and get legal advice if they want to. Okay, I know you can do a lot on the internet now, but they might want to talk to a lawyer about it. And that's why we give them the 3 working days notice. We give them all evidence in advance, everything in writing. We give them any audio if we've got audio. Ideally, we would transcribe it because it's obviously easier to read the transcription than it is to listen to audio all the way through. If you have CCTV evidence, you give them access to that CCTV. If it's small enough to be attached to an email, great, or in a Dropbox folder, fantastic. If it can only be seen on your monitor in the club or in your building, you then arrange a time for them to sit and review it with supervision. They're not alone, so they can't delete it, but that they have time to see that. So they have everything they have, and you can only rely in the disciplinary on the evidence that you have given them in advance. You can't add in anything else afterwards because then that would be considered unfair and you haven't given them a chance to prepare. Okay. They are allowed to have a companion, a colleague, or a trade union rep. That is the extent of the legal entitlement. Okay. And you cannot object to their companion if they meet that criteria. So if they ask, I don't know, a director who is, proper employee to come along and that director says yes, get angry at the director for saying yes, but don't get angry at the employee for asking, because the employee is allowed to ask. The director doesn't have to say yes, they can say no, but it's just you cannot object to any employee, any companion they bring along. as long as they are a work colleague or a trade union rep. That includes people who were included in the situation, because we had that a couple of months ago. Even if they were, I'm going to say, even if they were the person that they punched and they said, right, I want them as a companion, that's their choice. This has gone to court so many times. You are not allowed to question the companion at all. Okay. You would give them, what we give them is a transcription, because you are audio recording. Okay, you absolutely have to audio record. Do not have a note taker. The number of times we've had the note taker get involved in the conversation, it beggars belief. It really does.
Or even sometimes they'll ask the note taker a question. They'll be like,
yeah,
come on, you know this, you were there, or you know me, or I've given you this before.
Yeah,
and then involved.
Everybody thinks he's an idiot, don't they? And the note taker goes, yeah, they are an idiot. Do you remember when they did? It's like, oh my God, stop. Just record it on your phone. Okay. Actually, it hasn't been recently, but we did have a phase at the beginning of last year when clients were saying, well, I don't want to record it because that makes it then more formal. It is a formal meeting. This is absolutely a formal meeting. There is no informal way to do a disciplinary. I did get the feeling this was a rather long established golf club where they're just going to have a chat. They're just going to have a chat, and then they'll just give them a warning, and the person involved will be very happy to take that warning, because we're all gentlemen here and it will be fine. And it's like, and of course it didn't. And they didn't have audio recordings. They only had note takers. And guess what? The notes in every meeting were disputed, every single meeting. And they had no way of proving that the notes were actually accurate because they had no audio recording. Again, this recording is to protect you, the employer, not the employee, much as we obviously don't want to be horrible to them, but it's so that we can prove that you did not do anything wrong. Okay.
The other problem about notes that we often see is that, this sounds awful to say, but people are not as good at taking notes as they used to be. And that's because we do so much more, online and on computers and whatever, and we don't take notes anymore. But the quality of written notes that we see are appalling. Caroline, I don't know. There's no better word for it, right? That's a nice word, right?
Yeah.
They're appalling.
Yeah.
Like, they're often written in like a summary type of style, or in the third person, or they're just like bullet points, like 5 bullet points. This is what was discussed. They are not word for word. No. And they don't. They're useless.
They don't give. So one of them I remember was like that. The point was there was a discussion about Bob's punctuality. Full stop.
Yeah.
It's like,
but what was discussed? Who said what?
Yes. Was it that it was brilliant? Was it was bad? What did you discuss? Well, we don't have that information because the note taker didn't feel that was important. And we're saying, well, we don't know whether it was important because we don't know what you said. What did you say? So absolutely record it. You can send it to us via WhatsApp. We then get it transcribed in our AI Fireflies, which is also on here as well, which has the advantage that it gives you the executive summary. So you can skim through that before you do the transcript to go, okay, is there any indication that there was a problem? Yes, at this stage, it looks like there might have been a bit of a altercation. Great, let's skip straight to minute 15 rather than listening to all the 15 before. And then depending on what we hear, we might have to listen to everything. But okay. So again, sorry, Nadia.
No, there was one other point I want to add to the disciplinary meeting. Carolyne was saying about the evidence, that all evidence have to be given beforehand, and you can't refer to any evidence that they weren't provided with or add anything in. Now, we sometimes see this. It's not doesn't happen very often, and in most cases you won't come across this. But if between the investigation and the disciplinary invite, between the disciplinary invite being sent, between the investigation and the disciplinary meeting, something happened, something further happened, the situation evolved more, you will need to do further investigation. So you will need to postpone your disciplinary and do further investigation so that you can involve and add that. Or you make the decision not to, but then you cannot mention it, that it is like it doesn't exist. So anything that wasn't included in evidence in the meeting doesn't exist when you go into that meeting. So just a heads up that sometimes happens, and then you need to stop, investigate further before you can carry on.
Yeah. Again, we would not involve HR in this. It would just be one person for the club, maybe two maximum, but absolutely always the audio recording. Right. Okay. Now, ACAS says that you could call witnesses in. Given how difficult it is to get the employee who's being disciplined and one person into the same place at the same time, trying to get witnesses to come in to be interrogated is not something that we would like to contemplate. So ACAS, again, look favourably on you allowing witnesses to be called. We see it more realistically. Again, it's not a legal right to do that. Is that you absolutely have all the witness statements beforehand. And if the person in the disciplinary says, yes, but that's not how it happened, you need to go back and ask them about da-da-da. You then go back to the witnesses and say, tell me about da-da-da. And we do open questions. We don't do leading questions. We do open questions. So we would work on that. But so just be aware, it's not going to be like a courtroom drama. It's like, here's the witness statements. You've had those in advance. Right. Why are we doing that? I'm going to say the other thing is that you should absolutely get audio recordings of witness statements. What we've had recently is that two people have, these are private sector companies, actually, interestingly, but they've both said, I don't believe that those are witness statements written by the people, even though they have been signed, wet signature by the person who says it's from. I believe that it was made up or they were put under duress. And so if you get audio recordings and keep those audio recordings, at least there's another backup to go, this is what was said, this person is saying it. It doesn't sound like they're being prompted. I mean, yes, okay, we could go into the whole, deep state and we're going to cut and paste everything. We don't have time for that, really. It's not worth it. But if you have the audio recordings as well as the signed witness statements, then they won't be questioned, or at least you can say, no, they are genuine. Okay. We've said that, no objection to companion, different team, and don't discuss each stage in the full committee. Also, because committees leak like sieves. And there's always somebody on the committee who feels sorry for the employee, no matter what the employee said, no matter how awful it is, there's somebody who feels sorry for them and they leak information to them about what's going to happen. And then that person can go off sick with, stress at work. Now, it's not a disability, but it's still quite effective to get 4 weeks off on sick pay. So it's
one club that we have, it's an old story, so you may have heard it before. But in one club, we had a committee or a board member that was so sorry for the person who had been there so long, and it was a bit of a boys' club. Felt so sorry for him that he actually funded his entire legal process after this person was dismissed. He was so against it throughout the entire process. Everything was shared. Everything was very transparent at the board level. And he used so much of that in his legal fight. So, I mean, that's a worst case scenario situation. But yeah, keep it in mind.
Yeah. And it was interesting when they actually got to tribunal that it wasn't as great a case as they'd all thought it was as well. So that was quite rewarding. So, right. Now, gross misconduct. You need, I'm going to say that the law has been going, and case law has been going backwards and forwards a bit on this. You used to absolutely 100% have to suspend somebody for gross misconduct to have a chance of dismissing for gross misconduct. And then it went through a phase of, well, if there's no danger to anybody and they're not going to interfere in evidence or anything, then you could probably leave them at work in a supervised place. I'm going to say that worked well in golf clubs, because you tend to, when you suspend somebody from golf club, then the committee is like, oh, well, they're no longer here, so we don't need to rush through this process. We'll wait until Bob's back in 3 weeks from the holiday.
Out of mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What we're saying now is it seems to be spinning back case law to you need to suspend. So if you think it's gross misconduct, you need to suspend. You would then, once you've suspended them, we would provide you with the letter to confirm that suspension. Suspension is always on full pay. It's never without pay, okay? Because that would be seen as a sanction. And at suspension stage, they are innocent, okay? We are gathering evidence to see whether they're guilty, but you can't suspend them on no pay, okay? You would definitely do it if there's danger to life or property, if they're sexual harassment claims, if they've punched people, if they've been embezzling money, you would put them going up at home. Interfering with evidence, we had a club manager, unfortunately, who felt he was trying to do the right thing to support the club, but he hadn't taken any money, but what he'd done with the money was not what should have been done with the money. And he was like, well, I'm just going to tidy it up so they understand what I've done. It's like, don't touch. Just, you're going to have to go now. If you have got evidence of gross misconduct, you can have the settlement agreement conversation, which is called a without prejudice conversation. Okay. And say, look, we got evidence here. You could be dismissed. If you're dismissed, you'll have no notice, and we'd have to tell people, although we don't, why you were dismissed. So why don't you take this instead? Okay. So there's that as an option as well if you've got gross misconduct disciplinary. The outcome from a disciplinary is actually either an advisory note, which means we realise we actually don't have enough evidence to give you a written warning because you've pointed out the glaring inconsistencies in the evidence we thought was so brilliant. I'm going to say, honestly, if we've got to disciplinary and we're giving an advisory notice because it's all gone incredibly pear-shaped. The other one is first written warning, then final written warning and a dismissal. You have to say in the invite what the likely outcome is. And you can't say, like one client did last week, to say, well, it could be any of them. No, it can't be any of them. It's either bad enough to be dismissal or it's mild enough to be a first written, which is the equivalent of a slap on the wrist. Which is it? Well, I don't know yet. Well, you kind of do know what he's done. So, you've got to put it in there. Okay. Outcome. Right. Okay. So you have your disciplinary meeting. You've said you do not ever say the outcome in the meeting. Okay. Because that would imply that it's a foregone conclusion and it's not a fair process. Okay. You do need to give it within 5 working days. Again, the working days are Monday to Friday. So if you had the meeting today, you would have to give the outcome by 5 o'clock next Thursday evening. Okay. We do tend to work on work hours. We don't do it to midnight because, that's just petty, even if we might feel like it at times. You need to do it in writing and you need to say why you're giving them the final written or the first written. Okay. If they are over 2 years, they have the right of appeal. Okay. Under 2 years, if you bother to go through this process, and like we said, the only reason you would usually do it would be for gross misconduct, you also have to give them the right of appeal. Otherwise, it's not a fair process. Okay. And that's the end of the work for the disciplinary team. Okay. It stays on record. The first written warning at the moment for 6 months. I'm not sure, Nadia. Do you think that should be up to 12 months now? Because we don't have many.
Yeah, I do, actually, because first written warnings are often given to things that are maybe not that serious, but they are usually the type of things that people repeat, unfortunately. Whereas when someone's given a final written warning, most of the time they go, "Sheep, I got away with that. I'm not doing that again." But first written warnings attempt to give for things that people do again. So I would absolutely suggest that you consider upping that to 12 months.
Yeah.
You can't give either for more than 12 months, by the way.
No. Yeah. Oh, right. Sorry. I was just, what does my shorthand mean? Okay. So it used to be, this would be pre-COVID, that if you had a final written warning for, say, punctuality, if you then were rude to somebody, you would have to start again with your disciplinary process. Yeah. And you'd have to do first written warning for being rude in attitude and then final written. it changed just shortly before COVID. It's now cumulative. It doesn't matter what it is. If you've got a first written and you do something else that would also be first written, that is automatically final written. And then if you do something else, totally different even, that would be a first written warning normally, that is cumulative and that is a dismissal. So it used to be a faff, particularly with the very savvy employees.
You'd have people that on two different, people would be on two different final written warnings for different things. Whereas now it's all conduct and it's all the same. Yeah.
So we can get rid of them. The appeal, they have to appeal the outcomes within 5 working days of receiving the disciplinary outcome. Okay. So if you wait until next Thursday to give it out, they've got until Thursday the week after to appeal it. Okay. They've got to appeal it in writing. I'm going to say ACAS says you've got to put all the grounds of the appeal in the letter. And some places, particularly the more traditional golf clubs, they've got to write it all down. Let's just have the meeting and see what they have, because if they don't have anything new, it's going to be a quick meeting anyway. And that's what we had last week, is that somebody appealed a dismissal. And it was just saying, well, it's unfair because, I didn't mean it. I was just being friendly. Yeah, well, that's not new evidence. You've used that before. So the appeal is dismissed. Thank you very much. You arrange the meeting. Again, you have to give them 3 working days notice of the appeal. You're not giving them any information, though, because they've requested it. So it's just an invite. Okay. And it needs to be somebody different. They are allowed a companion again. They get the transcription. You are recording it. And then club, no HR, I will take that out for next time I do this. And you can only improve the outcome, which means if you had a final written warning, you can either maintain the final written or you can downgrade it to a first written. You can't upgrade it to a dismissal. Okay. Now, this is when people say, yeah, but what if they say that they definitely did it and they're very happy they did it and did it? I'm going to say, yes, while that is always an option, we've never had anybody who's had, the courage to say that. They're always saying that they didn't do it. Nobody's like, yeah, you can't do anything to me. It's like, okay. So we have the outcome. Again, you've got to give the outcome within 5 working days in writing, not face to face. And then that stays on the record as well. And that's it. There's no further appeal. That said, we have an infamous client who we've changed the process now. Please check your appeal process. If you're one of our clients, it shouldn't be a problem. But if you aren't, you need to check what your actual appeal process is, because we'd only just started working with this client. They had a disciplinary issue. We started going through it. We said, end of the appeal. Right, that's it. And he said, no, there's another appeal. I'm like, what are you talking about? And they actually had 2 appeal processes in their internal process. I don't know who did that. There's never been 2 appeal levels at ACAS. So where they decided that was going to be fair, I don't know. But that meant we had to go through 2 appeals, as well as a disciplinary, as well as an investigation meeting. That was so painful.
I just want to add about appeals that at this point, everyone who's sat in this meeting will probably be asking someone else to please hear the appeal and struggling to get someone to agree to do it. So one thing that's important and helpful to mention in this situation is an appeal is not rehearing the entire case. There are very, very rare moments when it would be, but I can't count them on my one hand over the last 5 years, the ones that we're going to rehear this case because there are so many concerns. But the majority of the time, it really is just you're going in, you're hearing why they're appealing, you're looking for new evidence, you're looking for process discrepancies. And that's pretty much it, isn't it, Carolyne? Those are pretty much the 2 things that the person who's going to appeal going to look for. And then they're going to look at the appeal. They might speak to 1 or 2 people if they feel they need to, and that's it. It's a much smaller actual job than that of the disciplinary.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to say the 2 appeals that we've had recently, were a lot on process, and it's just interesting because they've been accused of something and there's no defense saying I didn't do this. It's just your process, your witnesses were forced to make these statements. It's not I'm innocent and I know that because those witnesses didn't see anything. No, there's no protestation of innocence. It's just the process is wrong and therefore this sanction is wrong. Not I'm innocent and therefore it's wrong, which is always fascinating to see. Oh, and then there's the golf HR team. Yay! So, okay. So that was a lot of information. Obviously, it's going to be recorded and put on the YouTube channel. I'll send you out the link. Are there any questions about that? And if not about that, about something totally unrelated? Melanie Pointer. Of course there is.
Of course. Very briefly, and this is an unusual situation potentially. I've got somebody who was on a visa. They've gone away to India. The visa has run out. We couldn't get it sorted. She's sorting it out from India. However, she's on a contract, and I read your contract, and it says that if you become illegal to work in the UK or whatever, you have to be dismissed. But do I just leave her on the contract until she comes back? Do I have to technically dismiss her and then re-employ her, or how does it work?
Nadia?
Yeah. You answered your own question there, Mel. Yes, you should terminate this employee and then re-employ her. You're not technically doing something wrong by having her on your books, but she's in India, as long as she's not doing any work and you're not paying her anything at all. I'm saying she. I don't know. It's a she. Anyway,
It's a she.
That was just a lucky guess.
You mean not even paying holiday, not paying anything?
No, you shouldn't, because she shouldn't be working. Therefore, she shouldn't be earning, and holiday is earnings.
Right.
Yeah.
So is that from the day her visa run out?
Yes. Now I want to add something to this, Mel. The reason why this isn't a good option is because the Home Office might still want to look at you to see that this is true. And you're not going to want that. You're not going to want the Home Office digging through all of this to make sure that they are happy that it's okay. And also, the longer you keep her on, the harder it's becoming to justify a dismissal. Although, seeing as she's in India, she can't claim unfair dismissal anyway. So your best option really is to have a conversation and to say, look, you've got 5 days to submit a valid visa to me or prove right to work. Because a lot of the time, if your visa is in application, even if it's in appeal stage, you still have right to work. But I assume she'd be back if she did.
Well, at the minute, she's told me that she can't. She's submitted half of it. She's got to submit the second half, and then it takes 15 days to process, working days. So that's at least another month.
Okay. So what you can do is you can say to her, look, you've got, I'd say 5 days, but if you wanted to, you could say you've got 28 days to submit this to me. And if at that point you cannot show me right to work or give me a share code where I can check it and see that there is right to work, then your employment will be terminated based on, and then the clause, and we can do something in writing for you. But, don't put yourself in that position where you're keeping her on and you're making things difficult for yourself, because that's all that will happen.
That's what I mean. I just don't want to be doing something that's illegal, because I was just waiting. And it wasn't when I thought, oh, crikey, I should check that contract. And I looked at it, I was like, I don't know if I'm doing the wrong thing by waiting for her to get this visa.
Yeah, I don't think you should wait much longer. You should give some time, because visas take time and it's not the employee's fault, But on the other hand, also you have legal obligations as an employer in the UK, and you don't want to be stepping over that line. So if you are choosing to keep her employed for another 28 days, for example, to allow her to submit a right to work to you, then you should say something along the lines of, during this time, you are not doing any work and therefore not earning any income or holiday or anything from us. But we will allow you a period of 28 days to submit right to work. And if you don't at that point, then, your employment will be terminated. you can do something like that, but really cover yourself, because it's important that she can't be seen to have worked and earned.
Yeah. Okay. So I just put it in writing, and then that's good. And if someone has a day off sick because their husband has a cold and then tries to claim it as sick,
no, they're not off sick. They're not off sick. Their husband's off sick.
Yeah. So they said, I'm taking the day off sick because my husband has a cold, and it was one day, and
My husband has a cold.
this person obviously has put it down as sick stuff, but I don't think they can because they're not sick. And do they have to take it as holiday, or how do you have to do it?
Or unpaid. Holiday, or
okay.
I'm going to say there's no requirement on you to allow them to take holiday because it was very short notice. It didn't meet the criteria.
Yeah, was that on the day?
Yeah, so I would just say it's unpaid. You weren't sick. Maybe that's why you learn not to say I'm off sick because my husband's sick. I would have thought you would have learned that by now. But yeah, I would be unpaid. Odd. Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
why do you
how hard would it have been to just say, I'm sick, my husband's also got a cold and I'm sick?
But you don't even need to say the husband bit. You just say, oh, I'm really ill. Oh, yeah, I'm okay.
Man.
Fine. All right, thank you.
Yeah, lovely. Melanie Drake, have you got anything? Are you absolutely gloriously happy? Excellent, good. Right, so I'll put this up on our YouTube channel. And when my daughter is back from gallivanting around Asia, we'll have lots of little short videos to go out again, but that's quite beyond me at the moment. I'm going to be gallivanting around Cape Verde next week, so you'll have Nadia all to yourselves next week. So it's probably just going to be a question and answer session. So if you want questions, because if you're not here within the first 5 minutes, next week she's going to go, right, I've got plenty to do. I'm off. Thank you very much. Yeah, and otherwise, just let us know in the meantime.
All right. See you next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you want a free tribunal audit of your employment contract and handbook, click the link in the description below.